Hello and welcome once more to a Synced Stories production. And I'm Chris here, and we're going to do a Tintin redrawing today here in this video. So in this part of this multi-part series, we're going to tackle the sketching of the hand, which will be the most significant sort of focus here in this part. So we're going to add, if we're looking here at the panel, I'm going to add a hand down here somewhere, which is Professor Calculus' hand. And with that hand drawn, then our basic or rough sketching is done, and then we will continue on to, in the next part, we continue to refining Calculus, refining Tintin, and refining the hand. But before we start today, I'll use my usual introduction or usual advertisement here. So I'm promoting my own comic book here, which is 987 degrees centigrade, which is the first book out of 8 in season 1 of the umbrella title called Unlimited Danger. So Unlimited Danger is the series, and 987 degrees centigrade is the first book, the first episode. And this is a science fiction action thriller, and the main person you can see here is Barry Riley, and he is in a lot of trouble always. So and on the back cover we can see here that it's a typical sci-fi setting, and we have the 8 volumes already planned and ready to be drawn. Okay, so that's enough of promotion, and let's get back to the video. So what we're going to do here today is to, as I said before, we're going to draw the hand here. We're sketching the hand. Perhaps not drawing is perhaps the wrong word, but we're sketching it. We are trying to get the feel for the form and the line quality and the position and the composition and all of these things. And speaking of composition, I would like to talk a little bit about this panel here, because the interesting thing from a staging point of view is that these two characters here are not, it's a little strange, I think. Because, and why is it strange? Because when Professor Calculus is talking, he's saying a lot of things here. His eight lines of text in the French edition, and so he's very angry. He's super angry. But the thing is that he's talking with Tintin from the last. He started his complaints in the previous panel with more general complaints, and now he's sort of more detailed complaints about what's really wrong with this situation. And in the previous, let's see, in the previous panel, see if I have this here. Okay, it is here. Okay. So in the previous panel, blowing up it a little more. What he's doing here in that, let me tell you, I'm having my reference page here on the left monitor, which you cannot see, but here in this panel, in panel A1 on page 33, in the Castafiore Emerald, Professor Calculus is standing to the left, and he's sort of holding his knee because he fell previously, and so he starts his complaining here in a more general way, and then, but here in this if I can draw, let me see here if I can quickly just make a new layer here in this panel. He is doing a couple of things that are different from in the A2 panel. So one thing is different is that his head here is almost in profile. So his nose is really sticking out, and his glasses are very elongated like that, and his eyes are visible. This is important. His eyes are visible as dots. And the eyes are really looking directly at Tintin, who stands here and looks at him. Tintin stands here and looks directly at Professor Calculus. And they are holding arms. Tintin's arm is held by Professor Calculus, and vice versa. So they are holding each other here. Tintin's left arm holds Calculus's left arm. Okay, so it's the left arm there. All right, so they're holding each other here. Is this arm here? Tintin holds Calculus, and Calculus holds Tintin. Right. So that means that their heads cannot be more than, I don't know, half a head away or something. They're pretty, maybe one head away if Professor Calculus is leaning a little forward also, so perhaps there's a head spatial distance in, if we were to think of this as a 3D room. Anyway, so okay, so in panel A1, Calculus is close to profile, he's looking directly at Tintin and he's talking directly to Tintin. But in A2, well, we have A2 here also, but since we have sketched it a little better here, we can, in A2 then, somehow or other, Calculus is now not looking at Tintin. He's looking away from Tintin almost. And he's actually not looking at all, because his eyes seem to be closed almost, or like that. So he seems to be. And then also here, Tintin seems to be. He's in the same position as in panel A1, but Calculus isn't. So here Calculus is sort of speaking into no man's land, or I mean, his seems to be directing his speech to someone else over to the right, or well, more straight ahead, like that, to someone over there. But so we may ask the question then, why is it like that? Why couldn't he continue to have his head to the right as he had in panel A1? Why isn't that a good idea? Well, there are different explanations, of course, but one explanation, of course, is that of the 30-degree rule in cinematography. I think that's the traditional name. And that means that if you are making a new shot, if you're filming the same scene but you want to have another shot, then you must, well, must, but if you want to sort of get a nice effect, then you cannot just turn him a little. It has to be noticeable, not too much noticeable, but subconsciously perhaps noticeable that there is a new shot, and the sort of the minimum angle for moving the camera is 30 degrees approximately, right? So this seems to be what he's doing here. He didn't just turn his head 3 degrees or 5 degrees or 10 degrees. He turned it a something like 30 degrees, it seems. So and that gives this panel a freshness that it wouldn't otherwise have, because if the heads were positioned exactly the same, then it would be more boring, I think. And I think so and I think like film directors would agree with this, even if there were no other motive. It's always good to move the characters within the rules of the game. I mean, there are many rules, of course. I mean, um, but 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 this is seems to be a one of the rules that one could sort of make use of. So that's one explanation. Another explanation, what was I thinking now? Oh, yeah, another explanation. Yeah, I had something on my mind. It was all clear to me, and then something happened. All right. I don't recall my other good reason for doing so, but oh yes, now okay, so as you can see in this, well, you can't really see it, but there might be a trouble here with Professor Calculus' head in terms of his moustache, because his moustache is quite big and it's like partly covering the mouth. And so when you're having a small him in smaller scale, like here, it's actually not evident. If you really look at this, it's not evident. If we take away the anger lines, the anger effects, it's not really evident that he is sort of very angry, and you can hardly see the mouth. It's not as it's a little different with Professor or with Captain Haddock, because his beard is not covering, or it's easier perhaps to draw it. There's something about that also. So that may be one reason why it is. So what I'm trying to say here, that in profile it may be harder to depict Professor Calculus very angry because of the big moustache. So maybe it's easier to draw an open mouth like this, when you're looking at it more en face, or like more, it's not really straightforward, but or 3/4 kind of view. So those were the two compositional kind of comments I had about this shot. So in terms of the blocking, then, so it's when it comes to composition, it's about blocking. It's about the staging of the characters. Where are they going to stand, and how are they facing, and how which angles should they have, and like that. So when I'm looking at it now, it looks a little funny with him talking almost straight ahead here, while Tintin is standing at the very side and behind him also, like that. So Calculus shoulder goes here, and Tintin is behind. Anyway, so that's just a an observation. So because this is important from a comic book creator's point of view also. So what should I do in my panels if I want to show someone as very angry? Should I adopt this technique? I mean, there are situations where you have a character alone in a panel, very angry, but if they're angry directly at another person, which is also visible in the frame, that's another kind of situation. So these are things to be thought about. So one question then we that comes to mind is how should we? Well, yeah, this is the question. If we flip through a couple of Tintin books, is this the general method that he sort of consistently follows, or is it not? I'm right now on the top of my head here. There is some sequence in the Moon albums where Professor Calculus gets very angry, and it's Captain Haddock who is calling him something ugly, and then Professor Calculus gets just super mad. So the question is, when we go to those all albums, I think it's the first album, because they are preparing to go to the moon, and right. So the question is then, okay, is this a recurring theme in Tintin, or is it and is it only for Professor Calculus, or is Hergé, is he also blocking Haddock the same way? When Haddock, I mean, Haddock is more angry more of the time, I think. So maybe we can discover something new there. All right, so now let's get on with the. I think that's enough for the blocking, and so we can continue with the hand. And we set this up nicely here, so Calculus, and then we can set, let's do like this, we do them separately. So I'll create a new layer here, hand, sketch. This is of course Calculus's hand, but I'm putting them up in this order here because this is the sort of creation order. So I'm putting the hand folder above the Tintin folder. Okay, so let's just call it hand 1. Like that, and we have a layer there. So now let's see what the original art here I have on my other monitor says. Well, I'm getting down to 100% on my So, and we're still at page 33 and panel A2, right? So this is the target. And the hand should go here somewhere. But this, in terms of composition, is very problematic, because we have to be very careful with the line work now. So it's not just to draw a hand here anywhere, but we have to position it very how should I say, carefully, because we don't. So, and this is the problem with comic book panels, that the more lines you add, the more problems you potentially can create, because you don't want lines crossing other lines in ugly fashion. And what and an ugly fashion can be many ways. So there'll be many ways to introduce an ugliness into a panel if you're fond of making many lines. So, and one thing then, in terms of, and let's just start by sketching, and then we'll automatically discover the potential problems. Okay, I'm taking up my other here, my left monitor also at 200, so we get a sense of the thickness of the line also. That's very important. Okay, good. So now we are on, I'm just double checking now here with, we can hide this one for now at least. And we are double checking here with pressing Alt and clicking with the mouse here on the view to just check that we have an empty layer which has a white background, and that seems to be the case. So now also another thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut that out already. I'm using white here as a background, but it's always nice to have a smaller area. So we're basically going to do stuff in this area. So I'm cutting this out, I'm copying and pasting, and I'm just renaming here and removing this, because this is handy, because when I press the move tool, the V keyboard, the V key on the keyboard, I can then easily resize it and move it and like that. But if I have the whole canvas filled with one big layer, it's not so easy to resize, because then I have to diminish the scale, and then I don't see the small hand as clearly, and all of that. So anyway, that's just how I do it. So okay, good. So we are at the hand and multiply now. One of my buttons that I have programmed with an action to make it quicker. Okay, so let's draw. We want, where are my colors? I don't know. Colors, there they are. Okay, good. So we want a little red, maybe not that red. I think we're usually doing this one here. And we want the brush for and we want 20% approximately, and we have the hand should approximately go here, and it should be, let's see how big it is. It should be something like the length of the hand should be approximately like the thickness of Tintin's head in this here. So if I just, maybe we can do the usual sketch layer here. Let's make another, or like a, call it ruler or something, ruler, grid, or help. Okay, let's just do that and do a multiply on that as well. And I think we're using green for that, at least in these videos. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly approximately make a square here where we should have it. It's not really a square, but so his hand should end approximately here, and then the arm should start. And then the thumb is going to go something like that. This has to be redone, of course, many times over, but the extent of the hand should be something like this. And the angle here, this is very important here, because we will not see the actual connection here to the arm when it's bent here, but this has to make sense. So a little off angle here can make a bad impression. So we have to always be careful with angles. Right, so let's see, we can select the hand layer now, and we shift, we get to light red, and we press 2 for 20% opacity. On the brush, the layer is 100%, but the brush is 20%. Okay, so now we're painting with the red again, and this should start something like there. This is a nice hand. His drawing is just so good. I'll say. And then the thickness of the fingers. So they should go something down there. There should be a line down here. And it should end one thickness away from the little finger here. So it should go over that point a little bit, but not too much. Now the question is, how many fingers can we actually draw in here? and we make this nice, and this angle here and the angle must be more out here. Let's remove the grid. So we have angle must be a little more out. Something like that. And then this angle, of course, also should be adjusted. Everything is continuously adjusted. And this angle here, I see that now, that this angle here compared to the shoulder here, if we have this shoulder right, then this line should actually come further away from the shoulder and with another angle. So it should go down more. Should be something like that instead. So then we can erase that line. That, and then instead we can see if we are lucky with this other. So let's say we take it to something like that. Question is, how long should his fingers be? That is a question. Let's make them this long. And now he's doing but this, okay, this is the problem. It's actually, okay, we have to move it down a little bit. Okay. The whole hand must go down a little bit. I see that now, that the white color there. So the angle seems to be pretty good overall, but the angle of the okay, something, maybe even more. Okay, and then we go back to the red, 20%, and we have we can, this is a true trial and error, but it feels like this finger should be a little longer, but maybe we're working in a slightly different scale, and then we can always, as long as the individual components of the whole hand are relatively like in between, like one finger and the other finger, and if all of them are proportional, and then it doesn't matter. Then we can always resize the whole hand later on. But if we make it the other way around, that they're not proportional to each other, then it's a worse scenario. And then the middle finger here is, I don't know, it's really small here, so because the index finger is, oh, it's not the index finger, I don't know what that finger is, not the small finger, but the one next to it. I'm not a native English speaker, so I'm always having linguistic questions about the correct expression for every occasion. Okay, so let's see. Like that. And we're not just still sketching, and then he does something like that. And this thumb is quite long. I don't know, I mean, I'm not, I probably wouldn't do it myself this way, but now this is sort of like an exercise, not in creating my style, but to replicating Hergé's style. So we'll do it as closely to Hergé as possible. Of course, it really is not so easy to do this work, since also the scale is quite, doing this at this scale is time consuming, but it's a lot of, I think there's so many interesting questions that are, at least what I think, so that we sort of bump into, that it's really worthwhile to do it, even though it takes many hours to complete this panel. Let's see. And then we will have to have a thicker line eventually. But this is a tricky, this finger here, to get this right here is not so easy. But of course we should paint it in the other, we should always start down here when we're doing it, because this finger goes, the last finger goes on top of the one nearby here, and so then sort of automatically delineates everything. this is, I must say, pretty tricky here to get this nice. Oops. Does this work here? Okay, we have to get back to this later on, but at least it's something. It's something. And this last finger here is actually thicker than I had expected, but all right. And then the last thing we're going to do here is there is a kind of a stroke here in the middle of the hand here. It goes something like that, and then there's some bump there, some extra shadow. And but it's not exactly circular. It goes more straight in the beginning here, up here, and then it sort of turns. So maybe we can do it something like that. It's reasonably okay. We can do this in a bigger scale, perhaps. There shouldn't be a. This should be more like that. Okie dokie. Alright, so at least one sketch. So what I was talking about before here then is the complexity of putting this hand in a nice position, because I'm now using the move tool V here again. So if we put this hand here, then it intersects with the ear, with Tintin's ear, so we can't have it there. But if you put it here, then the shirt is sort of becomes some sort of like a railway station of lines here, closely sort of crossing together, so that may not be so nice either. And then if you put it here, then you sort of cut off his cheek here, or his whatever it's called, under the mouth there. And same here with the shirt. It sort of like, there's also a cross section here between the sweater lines and the shirt lines, and then comes the hand as well, and then of course you can't have it really here either, because that's too close to the mouth, and then you can't have it here either because it's too close to the mouth, and then you can't really have it here, because then you sort of you have the Tintin's mouth in between your fingers. I mean, it doesn't, and you can't have it here either because that's too close, and like that. So you don't really have too much choice in terms of positioning nicely the hand. So then we have another lesson here, and that is that the sort of sometimes there are no real good alternatives. Sometimes you just can't find any clean I mean, that would have been nice, because there would be white behind there, and no disturbances and like that. But sometimes you just can't do that. So then you would have to prioritize. And how do you prioritize? You prioritize always the face. In my opinion, at least, you prioritize so you never allow intersections like this or like that or like that. As I said before, is for the mouth and for the mouth and for the ear. For the ear. So you must sort of. So the only possibilities actually to do it is over here. In this. So you have to go as far down as possible to move away from the face. But then you can't move too far down either. So you must see that there is a hand, and you can't cut the hand. I mean, this is, you can't cut the hand where you want. I mean, if you are showing a hand, then the whole hand must be there, or at the very least, all the fingers must be there. So actually, what Hergé has been doing here is that he's sort of showing off the closest cut off of a hand that we ever could allow, because the problem is that he has to move the hand as far down as possible to make it interfere as little as possible with Tintin's head. It would have been better there, but then the at least this finger would be wouldn't be visible. A part of this finger, and maybe little parts of the second one here also. So this is I think this is how he has been thinking, and it is certainly the way I am thinking, because we have already placed Tintin here. He cannot be anywhere else. So if we want Tintin in the frame, I mean, another possibility would have been, of course, to skip Tintin at all, because we know that he's there. So we could perhaps have had Calculus alone exploding here, and we perhaps could have had him in greater magnification, and had the balloon situated more like this, like along the right hand corner instead, or the right hand side, and taller. That would be a possibility, but now the sort of the blocking is already done. We know that Tintin must be to the right, and if Tintin must be to the right, he must be in the same scale as Calculus. So he cannot be anywhere else than he is, because we can't move him from the situation. They have already been holding arms, so they must be within a face distance or so. Maybe it could be a little longer to the right, but it wouldn't. We still would have problem with the hand to placing it, so it doesn't. So I think this placement of Tintin in relation to Calculus is perfect. But the hand then. we have to get in, and we do it like that. We push it down so that we see all fingers, and then we cut the rest, and then we place it away from the mouth, closer to the ear and away from the mouth, because again, it's a priority. So I would say the priority is the eyes and the mouth, and of course the nose. I mean the sort of the nose and the eyes and the mouth, and then if it's a little closer to the ear, that's it's not perfect, but it's doable, as long as you don't cut the hand off more on calculus, right? So then we end up here somewhere, and actually the thumb is something like that instead. In the original, it's a little higher up there. Okay, but this is a tentative placement. So right, so we are back to the. Okay, so I'm clicking there now. So on the hand, so let's just fix this hand here, so we get a little. And then we can call it a night, I think, for this rough sketch. And then we can get back to this panel in the next video, where we will start refining Professor Calculus. Okay. And before I quit, there is just my usual, again, 987 degrees centigrade, Unlimited Danger, Season 1, Barry Riley, drama, action, thriller, science fiction. I think you will have a lot of fun. 40 pages, full color, printed version. Okay, so I'm hoping you have had a good time, and see you in the next part.